I'm just going to share a few stories in talking about the media, engagement, and communication. The first is an attempt at humor. I don't make any broad claims that it's a real joke, but this involves one of the few connections of religion and the environment in a jocular manner that I know of. So there's an atheist, an avowed atheist, and he's hiking in Banff National Park. He's having a great time communing with nature. All of a sudden he encounters a grizzly bear. He stops, the grizzly stops. The atheist panics and starts bounding through the forest, absolutely terrified. And the grizzly starts chasing him. So the atheist, running, says, "Dear God, please save me." And God speaks to this gentleman and says, "Well, all your life you've denied my existence. Why should I help you now?" He says, yeah, okay. "Well, at least make the grizzly a God-fearing Christian." And the Lord says, God says, "Absolutely, that's fine, I'll do that." So the grizzly stops, the man stops, and the grizzly folds its paws and lowers its huge, massive head and says, "Dear Lord, for the meal that I'm about to receive." Again, my email is on that little handout. Send me better ones, okay? Because I'm running thin here. Oh boy. Well, the first story I wanted just to share is something that touches us all, and it's the story of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. And if any of you have ever seen the fine PBS documentary on the American experience, you'll know this story. And the reason I tell this story is because it's illustrative of the role of the media in getting out an environmental message. We all know about Rachel Carson being a valiant, remarkably courageous woman writing this book as she's suffering from cancer and getting attacks from the chemical industry. What this particular story is, though, is a story of collective courage. As you may know, some people in the industry, scientists, surreptitiously sent her information. Some lost their jobs for that. But what's interesting is the role of the media in this particular story. When Rachel Carson first received a letter from a woman in Maryland near a bird sanctuary who had experienced the flyover DDT spraying and hundreds of birds dying, she wrote to Rachel Carson and said, "Please help us." And Rachel Carson proposed an article to Reader's Digest. Now, Rachel Carson at this point was a world-renowned author. Her book, The Sea Around Us, had been on the New York Times bestseller list for many weeks. She was an established author, but Reader's Digest did not want to go near this. So she realized she had to do a book. So she began to prepare a book and approached Houghton Mifflin, her publisher, and her editor, Paul Brooks. And they looked at it and said, yes, this would be a very important book. As she does the research, news begins to leak out what she's doing in the chemical industry. So Velsicol, a powerful chemical company, begins to write threatening letters to Houghton Mifflin. And Houghton Mifflin says to Velsicol, "No, we know this is an established author, we trust her research, we know she's a respected scientist, and we're going ahead." As the book was nearing publication, the New Yorker decided to do excerpts. The New Yorker runs an excerpt, and again, they get threatening letters from the chemical industry. Do not repeat, do not have other excerpts from this person. We will sue you. New Yorker didn't back down and said, "No, we think this is valid, and she's an established scientist. We'll continue." The book is published, and Dr. Robert White Stevens of American Cyanamid and other scientists begin to attack her publicly and consistently. Monsanto was one of those leading the charge along with Velsicol and American Cyanamid. Interestingly, this backfired because it led to all this publicity that they didn't expect. So this sale, the sale of Silent Spring soared. It went off the maps for Houghton Mifflin. But the attacks continued. So CBS News decides with Eric Sevareid to do an interview with Rachel Carson at her home. And it was going to be CBS Reports. 2 weeks before, when they issue their publicity, CBS News receives over 1,000 mimeographed letters saying, "Be careful with this thing. This woman is not all she claims to be." Right before the broadcast, the two major sponsors pull out. "We are not sponsoring this show." CBS News said, "We're doing it anyway." The interview with Eric Sevareid goes on, And that night, Senator Abraham Ribicoff of Connecticut, who hadn't read Silent Spring, who had not really been following the story, sees Rachel Carson, and the next day starts hearings in the US Senate on pesticide use in DDT. This is a story of collective courage, of people doing their jobs and not buckling under to the threats. And this is a very important dimension of all of our work when we look at the media.